let's start again. So, oops. Sorry, I'm not recording. No, I am. Don't know what's happening with time. Oh yeah, I'm recording. Okay, so we want to do a new file, new design. So you can usually, this little FIGMA icon is where you can go to, so back to all your main files, and then file, new design when you want to make a new design. So I'm going to start from scratch again. So the first thing you want to do is go to the frame icon and choose your phone. And I was suggesting we use a phone that we've actually got, because then you can play it on that. So once you've got your frame, that's your first screen, and now you can think about going along, and a few people have had trouble finding the icon libraries, but it should be a little, might look slightly different to mine, but it should be an actions bar, and you're looking at your plugins and widgets. And Iconify is a good library to start with. Notice there's a lot of other ones. There's millions of free ones out there. Or you could create your own. So if you go to Iconify and just get a few icons. I'm going to get a search one because I think I need that. And if you can see the option for import as a component, then do that. Don't design on the page, move it across onto the artboard out here. Once it's a component, it should turn up in your assets library over here. So just click down here to say created in this file, and then you should see it now turns up as a component. If you can't, if the library you're looking at, because there's lots of different ones in there, doesn't let you import it directly as a component, then you can make it into a component. I'm just going to get a home button. So I can just drag that and it should come in. I don't know where it's gone actually. I'll try that again. Notice that it's got the blue outline. So that's just a frame, not a component. And notice it doesn't turn up in your asset library. So you can also, with some of these icons, if they're not components and you try to size them, sometimes they fall apart a bit. So if you find that happening, you just group it before you go and turn it into a component. Now if you right click or go to your file objects, you'll find you get create component here. Or if you right click, which is what most people do, it's sitting there as well, create component. As soon as you do that, notice it turns up in the asset library. So what you're aiming to do is to design off here, because these are like your masters. So I'll put a couple more on the page. So let's just say I'm going to have a map, and try to pick ones that you like the design of, obviously, and import as a component. And then if you want to get a standard size happening, I'll get a menu one. So you just got some basic things. So you'll all have different icons that you need. I've created this component. Now they might not be the right size, but notice you get the options over here for width and height. So you can standardize the height and width of each of your components. So have a look at that, because they'll come in at random sizes, you'll notice, depending on the library. So 40 by 40 I'm thinking is a good kind of set for mine. Okay, so what have I got to do next? All right, now these are my masters. What am I talking about with masters? Well, a master is controlled out here. So you don't put these directly on there. You've got to make your menu bar out here. So I'll make another phone 16, but I know that's the right width, and I can just, it's a quick and dirty way of making sure it's the right sort of size. Now I can start to organise them in there, and I might have text elements as well. Get them where I think I'm happy with them, something like that. And then the whole thing I can turn into another component so that it turns up in here. Before I do that though, there's another step, which is to put an auto layout on it. This is really important. You should find yourself putting auto layouts on just about everything, just about, because it helps you maintain the relationships between the objects. So add the auto layout, and now I've got something, and you can see it's got some gaps in between. Okay, so let's put a colour on it. Your fill colour's white at the moment. You can go down there and just give it a background colour. And these have all changed as well. And now it's got the auto layout. If I stretch this up at this point, so I go to there and I say, okay, I'm just going to drag it out, they're staying there. And that's because I've told them to stay there. I've said align left. But really on a menu bar, what you typically do is you'd align at the centre, and then it doesn't matter how much we stretch that up, they'll stay aligned centre. So auto layout is really important, and you can fine tune the relationship between the spacing and everything. Over here, there's your little spacing thing. So you can put it on auto, or you can, put in an amount yourself. So you're controlling the spacing between the items. And so we're getting close to being ready. We also have a thing called padding. So if you find it's too jammed at the top, or there's too much space, that's what the padding is. So the padding, we can change it. See, you've got padding 47. That's the sides. So I've got a lot of padding. So I could take that down to 10 or something. And you can see if I jam that up now, it's changing. So you can above and below as well, you've got padding, so you can change that. You can have a lot more padding, and it just controls how close the object gets to the edges. So padding's important as well. Once you've done this, you're now ready. Got the auto layout, and once you've got auto layout on it, you're now ready to turn it into a component so that it ends up in your asset library. So we've got to create a component from it. Again, that's down there, but you can also find it through the file menu. So create component. As soon as you do that, it turns up here. And now I'll just move all my masters off here. There shouldn't be anything on the page at this point, because we're trying to set up a master screen that we can use for all of our pages. So on this screen, we want to put this is our home screen, and we, whichever screen you decide is your master. And now we're ready, and we don't put this is our master. We want to keep that sitting here. All of these stay here. From the assets library, you then drag it on, and because it's got auto layout on it, we can just fine tune how it sits and its size on that page, and everything stays, the relationships between things stay the same. So, maybe I want to put the search bar at the top. Maybe that's all I have at the top. Fine, I can do that. It's a component, it doesn't need an auto layout, it's not in relationship to all the other stuff. But I've used a master, so that means if I change something on here, on this one, say I change the stroke colour or something, so it's red, notice how it changes here, because that's a master. And you'll see that it'll update in here. If I click there, it's now, they've all turned red. So everything, you might have 200 screens. Just think about this process commercially. If you end up, having to do one of these commercially, say you've done 200 screens, and the client comes along and says, I don't like that colour, can you change that? You don't want to have set it up so that you have to go into 200 screens and change individual colours. So if you understand that you're setting up masters out here, and don't freak out and delete them because it's not like Illustrator or InDesign. These just stay here forever, right? Sitting out here, and you now have this lovely assets panel, and you drag from the assets panel onto the page for anything that you think, you know, could possibly be changed later. Not so with pictures. Yeah, pictures just go onto the individual page. But at this point, when I think I've got all the things I need, now I can just copy this screen, and let's say that's now the menu page, and I can change the individual item on that page. I can customize it on the page. This is called an instance. These are the masters, but you can, over the top of the master, you can put an individual change. You know, so I could even change, you know, that little icon down there to a different colour if I wanted to, just on that page. So that's an instance I've changed. I don't know why you do that, because these should stay the same, right? So I'll undo that so you don't get confused. Okay, so that's what I want you to do as a first step, so that you've got something that's going to repeat and you're not wasting time, and you can make design changes here right across the whole thing. As you get into the project, if you change an idea, an aesthetic, you'll be able to change it. Okay, now in terms of what you do to create navigation that actually works, it's very simple actually. Let me just put a colour. Now I'll put a background colour on that page, just so that you can kind of see something happening. No, I've got to select it. My fill is white, so I'm going to put a nice soft. Okay, it's just so you can see the difference between the screens, and I'll make the home screen I'll just make it a little darker version of that. Yeah, just so you can see the difference, right? So now when I go to add my navigation, I've got to change mode. So you've got to spend, you won't start hooking this up until you've, you know, designed a few pages. But at the point where you want to start hooking it up, you simply switch to prototype mode over here. And notice there's some scrolling settings. We're going to talk a lot about those as well. But the basic thing for navigation is on the individual page, when you're in prototype mode, you get this little blue hookup symbol, and you just drag it across to the page you want it to flip to. It's as easy as that. And then think about it. To get back, I would need to connect to go home. So I get that one, I go back to my home screen. Now there are a lot, see how it comes up, it says on tap, it's got triggers, it's got actions. We're just doing a basic navigation. There's a lot more that you can do, okay? There's a lot more. But let's just keep it basic so you don't get overwhelmed. And it does show the destination, but just this simple thing. And then to test it, and you'll need to test every time you do something, to test it you go to play. But you do need to go to your first screen. If you accidentally are on this screen, that's what it'll play. That's what you'll see. So if you want to test the whole flow, you see it's flow 1. Let's just make sure we've selected it by clicking on the name, and make sure you are naming these. If you do not name your screens, then this navigation stuff just can't work at all. So then you hit the little play button, and you just straight away, you don't wait. Every time you do something, you pretty much want to test it. So I'm going back home. That's home. That should have been menu, but I've got the wrong symbol. But you can see I'm navigating from one screen to the other. Okay? So if you start simple and build complexity, you won't drive yourself crazy. Yeah, so we just start really basic. I would just design the screens like you did with Beck, and then start adding the interactivity afterwards. As long as you are setting up things like this as a master, then it'll all start to make sense, and you're dragging. This is the absolute basics. The only thing you're putting here individually is pictures and things like that. So I don't know if you remember how to do pictures, but I'll just quickly just make a shape, say I want to put a picture. Notice I'm in prototype. I've got to switch back to design. So you're constantly switching in between. For this lesson, you should just design, really, and worry about the prototyping afterwards. So if I want to put a picture on this page, let's make a shape. I'll just do an ellipse, and then you go to the fill, and then you go to the little picture icon and you look for an image, upload from computer. Oh goodness, I don't think I've got any ready, but let me see if I've got something I can put in there. No, I probably don't. Yeah, I've got something. Look. Oh, look, I've got optimized images and everything. Look, there we go. So you can see it fills it. And you'll also find, which is really nice, you can actually, there's a little bit of stuff you can do with it's got some Photoshop type tools in there. So you can actually do a little bit of customization of the images even once they're in the app, which is a really nice little aesthetic thing to do if you want to get a standard sort of colorization, a standard aesthetic going. Okay, so I'm going to stop there because I think that's more than enough to just get to the point where you've got these correctly set up, and then you won't get into some crazy nightmare where you've got some things components, some things not, etc. So we're just going to concentrate on doing this step first, making sure we get into the habit of dragging important things from our assets library. But notice I haven't bothered making the image into an asset because it's just a one-off. It doesn't need to end up in there, it's just a simple frame. Yeah, but notice that if I go to prototype mode, I can still make that into a navigation link. So images can also be used as navigation elements or things to animate with. All right, you have your screens in front of you, your paper screens, so that should help you get the layout going pretty quickly. All right, anybody need help? Yell out.